Hey guys, it's me, Houston, and I'm here to give you two major things that we can learn from the trailer of Zak Snyder's Army of the Dead. It just dropped today. If you haven't watched it, go check it out, watch it, then come back to this video. I've actually linked it to the into the comments or the description of this video, so go check out and then pop back because I think it can be instructive in a couple different ways. So I just watched the video, just watched the trailer, and one, just generally speaking, congrats to Zak Snyder. This looks like this is going to be a fun movie, super cool concept, and you know, after his success, I think with his cut of the Justice League, now his career really looks like to be it's on another upswing, which is awesome because I feel like people were down on him, and then he had the tragedy in his family. Now things are really kind of falling in place for him, and it's such a good follow-up to his Justice League contribution. And it's probably cool to get out of the superhero genre and do something new in a new genre for him, which would be the zombie genre. So what are the two things that I think you can learn just from watching the trailer, not even from watching the film, just from watching the trailer? What I think you can see just from watching the trailer of Army of the Dead is that you don't need to make a binary choice between story world and story. So many people think that when you approach a project, you approach a story, you either need to have a great story world or a great story, like it's a binary choice, that they're two mutually exclusive ideals. But you don't. A great story can exist in a great story world, and ideally you always have both. It's not true that they always cannibalize each other, that a great story, the more you world build, the more you have to take away from the story, or the more focus you have on the story, the less time you have the world build. They don't always compete like that. When you can find the way to balance a great story world with a great story and create a great world, and in which you tell the great story, now you have something magical. I think you have something commercial, right? So, because they do two very different things. The story is the product that you're creating, right? It's literally the product. It's the movie, it's the book, it's the song, it's the video game. It is the product that you're creating, and so you're connecting with the audience on an emotional level. You're rooting for the protagonist. That's where you get the thematic and the soapbox out of the plot itself. You have to have a great story, right? But the story world is going to do something very different. The story world is going to create story potential for the IP outside just that one story. And so now the story world, where we have this, this post-zombie apocalypse America, specifically that primary location of Las Vegas, now not only presents one great story that it looks like we're going to see in this Zak Snyder film, but we can actually see or read or play or listen to or experience 100 great stories. And so that's producing the story potential for the IP, but the story is producing the product itself. And they both go together. You don't have to choose one or the other. They're like peanut butter and jelly. They go together doing different things. Now, if you had to choose, I think you always need to choose story over story world if you were forced to choose. Right? So, a great story, if you have a great story and not a great story world, you can win an Oscar. But if you have a great story world and not a great story, then you just have a really bad book, or really bad movie, a really bad TV show, and nothing to really show for it. I think Jupiter Ascending is a really good example of that. Something like Tomorrowland, great story worlds, sort of poorly executed stories. So if you were forced to choose, I would go story over story world any day of the week. Right? But the good news, guys, the good news here is you should never have to choose. You should always be able to craft a great story with a great story world. A story is something that happens, right? But the story world is where it happens, right? And you should always create that context around the story that gives broader, that just gives broader life to the IP by creating that story potential, becomes that engine. And so they don't compete, right? They really go hand in hand and work together. At least they should if you do it right. And it seems like Zak Snyder has done it right here. It seems like a cool story, interesting protagonist. Seems like there's a vested interest, and you see that so soapbox and why we're rooting for the protagonist and the whole crew that you have, where they built out a character group, not just an individual character, and we're rooting for them for very specific reasons. We have a very specific goal that they're going after. It's a heist film, which I think is kind of cool, and so we know what that story is, but at the same time, you have this post-apocalyptic, zombie-filled Las Vegas, which is the story world itself. All of a sudden, these things to complement each other. That story world gives context to the story. All of a sudden, we have something cool, we have something magical, and we have something that can actually grow and scale over time, especially with the super story approach. So that's the first thing that I think you can learn just from the trailer of Army of the Dead. The second thing I think you can learn from the Army of the Dead is something that I call special sauce, or a point of differentiation. So many people think that when they come up with a concept or a high concept or a commercial idea that's been done before, that they have to, just come up with a different idea. The fact of the matter is, almost everything has been done, especially if you operate in what we call genre films or genre stories. Vampires, superheroes, zombies, right? Like things that have become conventions and tropes in a lot of ways, right? You land on them and they've been done 1,000 times over. Zombies have been done 1,000 times over. Superheroes now, especially in today's market, has been done 1,000 times over. And so a lot of people will have an idea and say, well, zombies have been done so much. We're so saturated with zombies. Walking Dead has been on forever. We've had, we've just had so many different zombie things just, over the past 50 years that maybe I should move on to a different idea. And that's not always the case. The sweet spot, I feel like, in Hollywood is not necessarily being completely original, it's being fresh. There's only, say, 12 chords in country music, but the thousands and thousands of great songs that come out of it, right? And so it's not necessarily inventing things that have never been invented before. It's about, how do I find a fresh take on a tried and true concept and have one foot in innovation, but have one foot in something that works and has worked over and over and over again. And a lot of times that just means going into that concept where you have that convention, you have those tropey elements, and you're just changing 3 or 4, maybe 5 different rules, right? And so Stephanie Meyer did this really well with the Twilight series. We've seen vampires 1,000,000 times over, but all of a sudden with her vampires, right, they don't melt in sunlight, they sparkle. They aren't emotionless, soulless beasts. They're super emo lovers, right? She just adds a couple little twists to the rules of that story world, and all of a sudden that genre comes alive, right? It just feels like different vampire stuff we haven't seen before. And the same way with zombies, right? We can say, when we've seen that, well, these zombies are fast, or these these zombies with a variety of different zombie films. Sometimes they'll bite you and you turn instantly. Sometimes they bite you and you have a fever for 3 days and then you die. Like, we've seen some different things and people play with the genre, but it seems like with the Army of the Dead, Zak Snyder really adds in a couple extra neat elements that he really pushes forward in the trailer. And so not only are they zombies, but they're zombies that aren't the sort of the slow, stupid brains type of zombies that we see, like the walkers in The Walking Dead, or the zombies that we've seen 100 times over. It seems like they can move like regular alive people, right? They don't have this deficit of sort of dragging their feet behind them and just kind of walking at this weird pace that normally zombies do, right? But we've seen fast zombies before, right? 21 Days Later, we've seen it in World War Z, right? But another point of differentiation, another element of special sauce is they've added this really interesting element where they're not completely stupid, right? In World War Z, they were super fast, but they still operated in this sort of this swarming hive mind sort of a thing. It seems like now there's some cognitive ability with this Army of the Dead that really makes these zombies a lot more interesting. They're like dodging punches, and they're thinking and strategizing, and it seems like they're partying even with each other. They're still maintaining relationships. So it seems like he's changed 1 or 2 or 3 of the zombie rules or the zombie tropes that we're so used to, and all of a sudden now it feels fresh. Are they still zombies? Yes. So the high concept is the same, but now is this a fresh take on zombies? Of course, and it just feels different, right? So all of a sudden, this helps you by setting one foot in the genre that always seems to work, right? But at the same time, now we have one foot in the innovative, disruptive, fresh take that is always important for the marketplace. And you really see it at the very end when they introduce the zombie tiger, right? When you see that zombie tiger, you're like, wow, okay, cool. Now it's really different. That's another element of special sauce that really just adds this really cool element. He adds a pet cemetery angle into the typical zombie movie. And so it's super neat, right? And then even if you flip it on that, you have a heist movie. We've seen heist movies. We've seen heist movies in Vegas. I mean, you go back and see Ocean's 11, very, very similar concept. A group of people go to rob something you don't think they can rob in Vegas, right? We've seen that to the point of convention, and we've seen that to the point of trope. But now the element of the zombies, what's between them and the $2 million or the $20 million, whatever it is, what's between them and the money? Zombies. And so the zombies actually freshen up the heist film, right? And the heist film actually freshens up the zombies in a new way. The zombie tiger freshens the whole thing up, and the fact that they can dodge things and they have cognitive abilities. 3 or 4 or 5 different things have made this feel like a zombie movie we haven't seen before. So really go watch the trailer and start to learn how to pick these things out and start to learn sort of these secrets of success. Success always leaves clues, right? And we want to decode these things in really fun, interesting ways. So again, first thing that we learn, you don't have to make the binary choice between story world or story. They both go together. Second thing we learn is you can add special sauce to a tried and true concept and make it fresh, even though it's not original, and still have something awesome. So I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts, not just about this video, but the Army of the Dead. What are you thinking? What are you expecting? What are you hoping for? Are you as excited as I am for this film?